Hello and welcome to the ICOVISIONS podcast. I'm your host, JM Crypto, and today we have a very special guest. It's Mukul from Alphablock.org. How are you, Mukul?
Very well, Jim. Thanks for inviting me.
Great. And I guess now, just to first off ask you, who is Mukul and what exactly is Alphablock in general?
Mukul Paul is a researcher, is a person who's working in the financial industry for the last 20 years. And Alphablock is a platform which is helping Mukul Paul bring a conventional business, financial business, a financial disruption to a global scale. So that's a short way of looking at it. And of course, I can go in more detail. Yeah. So I'm doing capital market research for about 20 years, and I've been studying market patterns, market structures, and took a charter from US, New York, and always was intrigued by markets. And somehow markets, they kind of happen to you. You don't choose markets choose you. And so I think markets chose me. And of course, it's a strange world out there with Wall Street and assets going up and down, and rich and rag stories. But for me, somehow markets became very virtuous because I started looking for mathematics in it and science in it and behavior in the market structures. And this behavior led me to some systems, and those systems were very very wonderful. Was a kind of reward a researcher seeks after 10 years or 15 years, or maybe sometimes these rewards don't come, but they came to me, and I was very very excited. And I realized that my process was not only very systematic, but it was scientific in nature, and there were some big problems I was solving. And one thing led to another, and to open doors in Wall Street and building an asset management practice is a difficult deal today. And blockchain did offer solutions, and this is how these two technologies, my experience and financial background and model building, got intertwined with the new technologies. So this is where the two of us, or an extension of my work, led to Alphablock.
Great. That's very interesting. And I guess also, were you the one who came up with the idea for Alphablock, and maybe how long ago did you come up with the idea, or end up even happening to build out the actual idea?
Yeah, so it was a journey, and the process was started happening when I enrolled for MIT FinTech program. And that was the first program. It was in March 2016. And when I saw the blockchain architecture, or I was introduced to it through the tutors and through the reading materials, I somehow felt that there was something wrong with the architecture. And of course, it was an eye opener for me to read through the various journeys Bitcoin had taken, and various use cases, and Ripple, and everything. And I was looking for a very specific thing from that MIT program. I was looking at finding my place in the fintech space. And my fintech process is building low frequency automated portfolio solutions. So that's what we do as a conventional business. And I was hoping that MIT will help me take that process ahead. But MIT FinTech was a lot about payments, and was a lot about about the new technology. So over the course or the program, I started to kind of understand that, or kind of ask a question, that how can my financial technology, which is so niche in the fintech space, I was building automated low frequency systems, And while fintech was about payments, how do I fit into this blockchain piece, and how can I utilize the blockchain piece? So there were two problems I was looking at solving. One was that how can you build a validation mechanism for an intelligent process? Because I had an intelligent process, we were managing money, we were licensing our technology, and I wanted to take it global. But all the time, or most of the time, asset managers we used to talk to, they used to ask us, prove it to us that you are smart, or prove it to us that you have a smart process.
Of course, yes.
And that process going again and again into the research papers, and since this was a disruptive process, it was challenging the conventional financial way of managing money. And of course, as a researcher or as a system developer, I had to get my story right. And stories in startups don't get right the first day. They take time. You understand, you learn
Yes.
about the industry. So it's a journey. And I was kind of getting very exhausted getting my story across. And though I started getting better at it, and we listed our solution on Nasdaq, and Nasdaq was our partner, and is our partner, and we listed these processes there. And slowly those processes were fully automated. They started to age, and when they were aging, our model started to show that they can deliver in a fully automated environment. So I was still looking at blockchain as a way of or a more comprehensive validation, taking somebody through your secret sauce, without giving that sauce away. And
Right.
blockchain had this process of blockchain technology had come to a stage where there was zero knowledge. And I was looking at that validation piece. How can I build that validation piece where anybody in the world can look at it and say, yes, I don't need any more proof? So that was one thing I was looking at. And the second thing was about crypto assets, because crypto assets is real money. And one of the other things which alpha managers or alpha generators like me face is that how much money do you manage? Do you manage $100 million? No, you don't manage $100 million. So come back to us when you manage $100 million and you have 3 years of performance track record. And so crypto was another thing I was looking at, because crypto was a process where you can use a one Bitcoin to build a whole portfolio. You can invest a single crypto asset into a whole portfolio, because you don't have to look at settlement on blockchain, but you can still run the model in terms of cash settlement on blockchain. So I was looking at crypto validation uh, 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 as an alternative to fiat validation, fiat
Right.
validation on these models. So these are the two processes I was looking at, and that's where the thinking process started. And then of course, you got to stay with the idea, you got to run a business, you got to develop a new idea, and that
Yes.
process stayed in the background. And I wrote a piece on 7th November uh, 2016 called how blockchain can disrupt Wall Street. And these were still early stages. I was emboldened with the fact that MIT gave me an award as the top business one of the top business ideas. And I felt more confident that I could embrace this new technology, understand this new technology, and I kind of stayed with the idea. And while I was working on that idea, my process, or my alpha process, or the alpha generator, or the smart process, was very core mathematics. It was dealing with the mathematics of complexity, or or in other words, complex networks. And complex networks is a science, or complexity is not a very old science, but some of the problems inside complex networks are very old. They are so old, as in going back to 1650s.
Mhm.
It has a history in computational linguistics, which is that when linguists started to look at the frequency of use of language or use of words, because they were looking at behavior in how we speak language, or the mathematics of language. So these are some old problems. So I was somehow dealing with that problem, and that problem made me think that blockchain also had a problem, because I had to utilize blockchain for my use case. But blockchain had a big problem, that it was not really a network. It was a man-made network. It was a ledger. And then, this news about scalability challenges and all the other bottlenecks that were happening with energy made me think that maybe my complex network process can also be used to solve the blockchain problem of complex network, to how to make blockchain into a complex network, how to make it very natural, how to make it more scalable, like into something which can really work beyond a ledger, something which can work like a market space. And this is how the idea, I stayed with the idea. And then I met Andre, who's on the call now with us. And Andre was in IBM, and he was dealing with new technologies, and was with IBM, and he was also very much into understanding the blockchain problem. So we decided that, okay, it was a good idea to take to IBM and socialize the idea, because we really did not think that we are going to build it from scratch or build it on our own, or Alphablock was still steps away. And somehow roadblocks as they happen, we decided that maybe it was good to build it on our own. And that is when the piece moved from blockchain challenging Wall Street to blockchain alpha, and it reached to Alphablock. And which happened because I started reading about smart contracts, and I started kind of putting the pieces together, that what was the challenge. And because my work was about complex networks, I started reading about the some academic papers on the network science in a blockchain. And when I realized that there was a structural problem, I started thinking, how can I bring in my complex network maths inside blockchain to solve the problem? And that is where the idea took shape, and somehow things fell in place. And I can go
Right.
more about it, but I just want to stick to your question in terms of how did it happen.
No, that's great. That's very informative. You know what? It's very interesting. I find as to what that problem is that you're looking to solve, how you thought of the idea, and how you're actually pursuing the idea. I think that's very interesting. As I'm looking even more into, and I have been looking more into your project. So, do you currently, I guess, have a MVP or minimum viable product of any kind that you may be currently working on?
Yeah, so we have been working on the same maths, which is the complex network, to build financial portfolios. So we actually went about building a very elaborate technology over the last 6 years. And this technology is now delivering solutions for global asset managers, from Israel to India to US and Canada. And we are now separating it from the intelligence, and we are giving this technology to Alphablock, because that technologies have a life. But technologies which are capable today, or what we believe is capable, we want to give it to the world. We want to give it to the world in terms of showing them that how intelligent processes can be built, how intelligent processes can be validated, how intelligence processes can compete. So this technology, which is functional, is one of the key components of Alphablock technology. So that is the one technology that we have. It's a process where data can be processed, data can be structured, and then anybody can put an alpha or intelligent process on it, and then build portfolios and disseminate portfolios. And there is a whole like library of visual tools which are there. So this is to just answer your question about what technology we have built. So this is what we have built, and what we are building now uh, is an open protocol where we want to show that how an intelligent process in a secure environment can be shared and can be validated and can be distributed. So this is what we are what we are working on now.
Great, great. That's excellent. And also, I guess maybe give us some insight as to the team's background and experience.
Yeah, so we have a small team, and we have statistician and mathematicians who work for us. We have a team of developers who work with us. We have a small team of blockchain experts who work for us, and of course we also have a biz dev team and a team of functional experts that are now scaling the project to the next level. And so there are multiple teams. As I said, there is a business that I'm running now, and this is alphablock.org is a community vision for us to help scale our business. So there are multiple teams. So there's a team involved in alphablock.org, and there's a team which is involved in the financial modeling process and delivery process and maintenance process and scale up process.
Great, great. And maybe as well, and you can elaborate on this if you'd like, what are maybe some of Alphablock's key advantages, say, over competitors in this space?
Yeah. So there is nothing like this which I am aware of. Not in terms of these two technologies I've mentioned. I do not know if there is an automated portfolio, low frequency portfolio process that delivers more risk weighted returns than a reference portfolio. Because ultimately, what is asset management space? Asset management space is about the reference market, and the asset manager's job is to beat that reference market. And the reference market is a benchmark or S&P 500 or TSX 60. So so manager's job is to beat the TSX 60, because if manager cannot beat the TSX 60, investor can just buy the TSX 60, and that's a very, very low cost. So technologies like ours, I do not know if such technology exists, because such an AI process also doesn't exist, which is very global and very domain agnostic and very style agnostic, preference agnostic. So it's a very, very unique science which we call as data universality. And again, it is built on the mathematics of complex networks. So that complexity is not in just financial data set. Complexity is also in language, and complexity is in your personal data set, and complexity doesn't have to be necessarily in a certain domain or not in a certain domain. So this is what makes us very unique in terms of our universal approach. It makes us very unique in terms of the problem that we are solving. This is a big problem, because bubbles and crisis is a big problem, and performance is a big problem. When I enrolled for MIT, the course instructor said in the introduction video that alpha is going to decrease in the time to come. And what I was there for was with an alpha process, which I was saying can increase in time. So it was a totally different viewpoint in terms of from where I came, and what MIT believed, or what the industry believes. And that is true today, because we have about $100 trillion in asset management, or low frequency asset management. And that $100 billion today is not delivering $1 trillion additional every year, because $100 trillion is a function of the market. If market is going up 10%, then $100 trillion goes up 10%. If market comes down 10%, then $100 trillion becomes 90 trillion.
Right.
It does not. That $100 trillion is not really creating incremental wealth of 1% every year on that $100 trillion, which is a very big challenge, because our pensions and your pension, my pension, is being managed by systems which are not really delivering. So it's a very big problem, because $100 trillion is not just about Canada or US or just regionally problem. It's also about asset specific problem. Science and technology today is not really used in asset management space. What is being used are broken financial models that don't deliver, and many of these financial models are as old as 1850s. We are
Wow.
still swearing by financial books written in 1920s and 1930s, talking about those valuation metrics which were talked about in 1930s. Things change, market change, and even if they were relevant at that point of time, there is need for making processes more systematic and scientific and replicable. If an asset manager is smart, he should be able to utilize system thinking to capture his smartness in a system which allows for replicability. Such replicable processes or systematizing processes are not there today. So maybe I'm giving a very long answer to your crisp question, but I thought it is very important to understand that the problem we are solving, I do not know if anybody is solving that problem in a very systematic process. And that is why the technology that we have is unique. And we are not just solving a big problem in terms of a use case, we are solving a big problem in science, or at least that is our aspiration, to solve a bigger problem of understanding complexity a bit more. What is complexity? How is what Einstein said about God doesn't throw a dice, or God doesn't play dice. The reason he said that in 1920s, 26, after his great work in 1905 with his 3 brilliant papers and Mirabilis, where he talked about relativity and then special relativity. And the reason he said about God not playing dice was because quantum mechanics was challenging classical physics, and classical physics was about order, and subatomic structures were about noise and about randomness. And he was not able to reconcile that why is classical order not seen in a subatomic structure, and whereas Heisenberg and all were disrupting the thinking process. So the reason I'm mentioning this is because while Einstein was doing what he was doing, there were some other thinkers like Vilfredo Pareto in somewhere around 1906, rather, when Vilfredo Pareto, who is the father of microeconomics, he discovered a behavior of wealth distribution. And he saw that 80% of Italian money was owned by 20% of Italians. And that became the 80-20 principle, and that became the power law behavior, or what general public might understand as outliers or extremities. Like for example, Amazon is a big company, and it has one of the biggest market cap. So some companies have a very big size, and a lot of companies have very small sizes. So wealth is distributed in a few, is not only true with the 1906 Italian wealth, but it is even true today. So it's a law. So this law of 80-20 or Pareto law or power law was discovered by Vilfredo Pareto in 1906 after Einstein's 3 brilliant papers. So Einstein did not have the opportunity to understand what his peers in different domains were talking about, because there was no internet to share information, right? So uncertainty is still discussed from an Einstein's perspective or from a Heisenberg's perspective. And somehow I believe that the critical mass, or we have this dark ages of science when research is incomplete, though we have moved ahead in terms of quantum mechanics, but we have not reconciled science. So that is where complexity as a problem is a very big problem to solve. And I believe that what we have could enhance that process, and that is why what problem we are solving is really very big.
Fantastic. No, that's definitely very informative information which you've given. So thank you for that. And overall, I guess to ask you now, would it be so that the Alphablock, say, process would help, say, investors in this particular space when it comes to, say, digital asset management, overall make better decisions based off of your data research for which the Alphablock protocol is fed?
Yeah. So that's the aim, and the aim is to decentralize and democratize access to intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
That is the grand design or the grand aim, and that we see happening in multiple stages. The stage one is the generalization problem. Finance is suffering from a lack of generalization. A Canadian asset manager can do Canadian asset management, he cannot do American asset management.
Mm-hmm.
An American asset manager cannot do Indian management. So there is a lack of generalization, because asset management should be generalized. A process science should help an asset manager to pick up assets from anywhere in the world, right? So though there may be compliance challenges and taxation challenges, but asset management space does not necessarily have to be very localized. Google doesn't have to be Google Finance Canada, Google Finance US, Google Finance India. So this first is this generalization problem we are solving. We are saying that finance is generalized. Investor in the world can pick up assets anywhere in the world. That is the first thing. And how are we doing that? Because our process is very universal. So that means we do not really differentiate between Canada, India, Israel, US, or any other market. Any preferences, in terms of how, what mandates are, what preferences are, whether it's preferences for technology, preferences of pharma, preferences for industrials or anything else. So that generalization can only be done because we can generalize pricing models. Financial models in the financial academic work, as I said, are very stone age. They are very linear. They don't understand dynamic markets. They don't understand financial markets like organic systems. They don't have system thinking in it, because economics is thought as social system, and social system is thought differently as other organic systems. So there is not generalization. So this generalization is what we are bringing in first, and then we are showing that with that generalization we can actually consistently replicate alpha, or we can beat the market consistently, and we can showcase that. So that's our claim. We are saying, tell us what is the basket that you want to beat, and we can show through our generalization that at the same risk we can beat your preference. So we can do a good job of selection without really going into very specific informational analysis. So that's one. And why should people believe us?
Mm-hmm.
The reason people should believe us is because we have NASDAQ, we have listing on NASDAQ, or we have real money under performance and we are delivering. But that's not enough for a global audience. Global audience needs a very hands-off approach, a very very visible approach, very touch and feel approach. And that is where Alphablock comes in. So we put our processes on Alphablock for anybody to see that, yes, this is real. They can scrutinize it. They are comfortable with it. And what happens with that? We bring a level playing field for any and every asset manager in the world. If you want to go to your asset manager, he should be able to use this level playing field to show that, yes, his process is scientific, it is consistent, and it is replicable. So there are many things. So first is the generalization layer. second is the accountability layer, and third is the distribution layer, because ultimately we need also those processes to be distributed. So this is our aim with Alphablock. And this process which we're doing on finance, because it is generalized, it can be done on your personal data set. Now we have a big problem with Facebook, and we have these challenges that Facebook utilizes your data and it sells it's to some other
Of course.
scrapers who are accessing, or who claim to understand how to extract intelligence, but you are not participating in that intelligence process, because it is being fed to you to make you consume more. You are not given your intelligence of your data back. So Alphablock also, because it is very data universal, it also can work with your personal data in a secure environment where your data remains with you. You have the choice to give or not to give, share, and we plug it into an asset. We plug it into a process like a portfolio, where anybody can say that I'm looking at a demographic of men above 25, and I want to study their behavior, and we build that process of intelligence which is solving a predictive need. So it's like building a financial portfolio like metric, which is very accountable on your data set, or data set of age group of men like us. So when we do that process, we create something called alternative asset on alternative data, because your data is not the conventional data or the financial market data. It's an alternative data, because there is a lot of insight in your data. So we have that capability to give it a metric which can be used uh, by uh, by B2B consumers, who can pay you or help you monetize your data without losing the security of your data. So this is the grand vision of Alphablock, that first we build and bring in that financial use case where predictability is really needed, and then we take it to an alternative data like your data, and so that you can control it and you can monetize it, and you can build services around it if you want to build a business around it, or you can lend it to businesses who are interested in your process, in your data, or extracting intelligence from your data. And this is how we move from the Facebook 2.0 environment, we move to 3.0, where financial data, non-financial data coexist, talk to each other, interact, extract intelligence. And that is how we want to go to Web 4.0, where
Hmm.
blockchain is married to the web. There are alternative assets, millions of assets, unlike stocks which are only maybe 10,000, 15,000 liquid stocks in the world which are worth investing, to a different alternative market mechanism, which is not really saying that I'm not going to work with New York Stock Exchange. It works in a very collaborative environment with existing markets, creating new markets, and that's the vision.
That sounds great. Very, very interesting. And I guess now, is Alpha Block an ERC20 token?
Yeah, so the tokenization, as you know, is a big problem, and not only from the compliance side, that it needs to be regulated. And you know how tokens have been
Right.
misused, and investors, need to be protected. But investors have to destroy their personal wealth before the regulator steps in and says that we need to save the other investors who and maybe sometimes, many times, it's too late to save the investors. And that's what has happened with $150 billion, or maybe $500 billion gone down the drain. Maybe not all of it, and and there are beautiful cases that have happened out of it, and new technologies have their pains. And but for us, tokenization is also a problem linked with complexity. Tokenization is again a problem, is a mathematical problem. And one of the biggest problem with tokenization is that it is copy pasting the economics problems inside blockchain. Because what is the problem today with stock market? One of the biggest problem with stock market, as I said, is a predictability problem. It is not, finance today is not beating the reference basket, and which means that bubbles and crisis create wealth and destroy wealth. And that's the same thing happened with tokens, because bubbles and crisis, bubbles come, it created wealth and it destroyed wealth. So
Hmm.
tokenization has to be also done in a way in which, the same way in which we want to make bubbles less bubbly and crisis less of a crisis. How do we make bubbles less bubbly? We dissuade using objective systems and pricing model to the to break these speculators into two groups: educated speculator and naive speculator. So the educated speculator understands that the pricing is unsustainable, and he comes and starts betting against the speculator who's unaware, who's naive, who's to learn. But how is the aware speculator more knowledgeable? He has to have a pricing model. He has to have a smarter pricing model. And what's a smarter pricing model? A more predictive model, a model which is beating the reference basket. So the same technology is has to be brought in tokenization. So first of all, we have to unwind what is wrong. So what is wrong today is that there is no such predictive mechanisms or no such pricing model which speculators can understand. So we want to bring those models to the tokenization. And the other thing we have to do is, we cannot build a real token by marrying or assuming that all intelligence is in Bitcoin. Bitcoin should be a function of intelligence. If Bitcoin has intelligence, it should go up. If Bitcoin doesn't have intelligence, it should go down. So unlike the Bitcoin of today, the Bitcoin of tomorrow should be based on an intelligent process. It should not be based on because your neighbor thinks the Bitcoin price is going to go up, so let us buy Bitcoin. It has to have a function, a value of intelligence. And for that to happen, we have to understand that intelligence is not owned by someone for all the time or something for all the time. Intelligence is very dynamic. It shifts. So we need to build many tokens, 100 tokens, 1,000 tokens, a million tokens, maybe a one token for every alternative asset class. And when we do that, then bots and alpha bots processes go and extract and understand where is intelligence, which is going to be more intelligent tomorrow. And they start building new portfolios of tokens which are always beating the reference basket of the token. So it's a different vision, and which is why this tokenization process is flawed, and it needs to be rethought. And when it has to be rethought, and that is when our token is like a fund. It shifts its value and it rebalances and it chooses something else. And that's how the tokenization process is going to be a stable currency. Otherwise, this is an experiment which is not a stable currency. It cannot be used. So we have to, how to build a stable currency is a question of complexity. A complex network has an ability to sustain. Nature has an ability to sustain. Nature has an ability to replicate. So if we want blockchain to really go to 2.0 and be what it can be, it has to be complex enough. And complexity is about many participants and many tokens.
Right, right. I can see from what you had mentioned that the vision is very strong. I really like your direction of Alphablock in general, and certainly with yourself contributing to the entire project in itself. So I think that's very, very interesting. Do you have a book?
Projects and prospects and creation is not an individual process. Creation is a journey, and creation have many contributors. And I have worked with multiple teams. I have lived through many crises, and
Mhm.
my team has contributed over years, believing in my vision, adding to that vision, helping me clarify that vision, sound that vision. So I have to give my old teams and my new teams the credit for helping articulate this process, and I could not have done it without them.
Fantastic. You're a true team player. That sounds excellent.
And
And
about the book, yeah, that's a project I'm working on, and unfortunately, the I have not mastered the art like various American authors who just amaze how fast they bring on subject matter books. And I for me it's it's a slower process, but I'm looking at it more like maybe 10 research papers, and a few of them have been articulated, and maybe it's a compilation or a rewriting of these 10 papers in a more lucid way for a general audience, and hopefully that we'll be able to do that soon.
great, great. Because I was going to say I'd like to pick it up. And I guess now to ask you and to close off, where do you see Alpha Block by, say, the end of the year or in the years to come?
Yeah, so we are looking at infrastructure to be ready in terms of an MVP environment and functional environment and real use case environment, this quarter. And we are already talking to non-financial partners who are looking at utilizing our financial technology to build services and bring more accountability and more metric to their process. For example, advertising is one industry we are addressing, and cybersecurity is one industry we are addressing, and consumer data is one process we are addressing. So we are looking at teams of non-financial teams, and who are going to be utilizing this infrastructure to build these alternative data assets. So I think that to assume that we'll have a double digit number of partners on non-financial side, and we have our current list of financial partners and clients who are already very excited about using this process. And so at least we want to do our bit, but again, as I said, this is an open protocol. We also want to handhold uh, teams and communities and businesses to show them that this process is theirs and they can utilize it to build their services around it and scale it.
Right. No, that's great. Thank you for all of the information for which you shared today on our podcast about Alpha Block. Hopefully, everyone out there can have a much more and better understanding as to what Alpha Block is, the problem that Alpha Block's actually solving or looking to solve, and of course, how they can see to benefit and reap all the benefits from using Alpha Block in general as well. That's great. So definitely thank you, Mukul. Also, how can anyone happen to, say, get in touch with you and your team as well?
So we have alphablock.org website. We are working on it, and we will have more open channels and open platforms, and we want to bring in various communities. So you are a part of our community, and you know how to reach us. And in today's world, it is very difficult to not reach anybody. Because you can reach everybody that
Right.
you want. So we have a website, and we are happy. Opening up our network to anybody who's interested to know about us and spend time and do the hand holding and explain, and rather we are looking for torch bearers who can actually come and spread this world for us. And Jim, this is amazing that you found us, and you spend this time learning about our processes. So you are a part of our community now, and thank you for this.
Absolutely, absolutely. Everyone out there, please have a look and feel free to check out alphablock.org. You certainly, have a great team. Meeting yourself, Mukul and Andre was a pleasure. I really believe in what it is that you're trying and seeking to achieve with Alpha Block, and I wish you all the best of success.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks a lot for your time today, and for this brilliant questions, and letting me share my thoughts.
Absolutely, absolutely. So everyone, feel free. I guess is there the downloadable white paper or paper on alphablock.org? We'll certainly be posting that in the description as well for you. Feel free, everyone, if you have any questions whatsoever after going through the information, feel free to reach out to the Alphablock team.
Thank you, Jim.